I remember going through a breakup years ago, and very unfortunately, during this same period in my life, I lost a lot of really close friends. I was extremely lonely, to say the very least. My confidence was at an all-time low, and I was just lost in life. And I didn't have someone then to walk me through this really painful experience, and so I looked to YouTube. I searched up how to deal with a breakup, and I actually couldn't find anything, at least that one resonated and spoke to me in terms of the situation that I felt that I was in, and number two, a healthy approach moving forward. I think that there are a ton of people out there willing to give their 2 cents, but I found a lot of that to be very toxic. And even at my lowest point, I recognized that I shouldn't be listening to those individuals because I would be straying so far away from my value system. I didn't want to put myself in a situation in the future where I regret my behavior in the past, right? And so I decided that I'm going to just go through it alone. And although I made a ton of mistakes, I've learned a lot too. And I believe that everyone does handle breakups differently, as traumatic experiences are personal to the individual, but I also think that there are commonalities across the board. If I can at least make you aware of some of these commonalities in terms of mistakes or just mindset shifts, then it puts you in a very advantageous position moving forward in this healing journey, and I hope to be able to do that for you. And so stay tuned as we cover some really important concepts. It was not just a waste of your time. You need to get out of this mindset. And I think this is the mindset that's the most common for people to adopt as they leave a relationship, because you think, oh, I just spent the last year or 3 years, the last 7 years with this individual, and because I don't have anything to show for that relationship, because the relationship hadn't panned out the way that I hoped it would, then it was a complete waste of my time. I regret every little thing that I did. I hate myself for doing that, and I wish that I could take it back altogether. And it was just a waste of my time. But actually, this is a very dangerous, unhealthy, and self-destructive mindset to carry, especially at such a vulnerable point in your life. And you need to be cautious of it. You need to stray away from it. And if you find yourself in it right now, lose it right now, immediately. Because what you're doing essentially is blaming your past self with the knowledge that you have now. And that couldn't be more unfair to your past self, because your past self was doing the best that they could do with the information, the wisdom that they had, right? And yes, did your past self make mistakes? Absolutely. But that doesn't make your past self a bad person. It just makes you human. It is your responsibility to extract from all situations, whether it be good, whether it be bad, and learn from them, right? And that's what you need to treat this past situation as, a learning experience, a learning opportunity for you, because you have to understand that it's not you pointing the finger at everyone else in life and blaming everything else for the situation that you're in. You need to start taking responsibility for your life. And actually, in fact, the only way that it can be a waste of your time is if you have that victim mindset, is if you are the same individual before, during, and after that relationship, then sure, you can consider it a waste of your time because you haven't evolved as a human being. But if that's the case, you have serious problems, right? You have way bigger problems than just that relationship. You have a fundamental, you have a principal issue in your life because of that type of victim mindset. If you are the type of individual that's part of this community that's clicked on this video, then I know for a fact you want to figure out ways to evolve. You want to figure out ways to heal. You want to figure out ways to approach all of this in a healthy manner, and I think that you can. It's okay to not be okay right now. Actually, in fact, it's necessary. This is probably the biggest difference between how I approach this situation and how a lot of people will tell you to handle this type of situation. They'll tell you that you should distract yourself, right? They'll tell you, and you see this a lot on social media, get your closest guy friends and girlfriends to go out clubbing, go out drinking, and essentially get over your past ex by getting underneath someone else. You see that a lot, right? You'll hear your friends saying, oh, you should meet other people and things of that nature. And those are also probably the same people that say that time will just magically heal. You see both approaches there, right? Distracting yourself and thinking that time will heal are fundamentally horrible ideas, right? Because I'm just going to give you an example of this before I even explain the rationale behind it. How many times, if you had the tendency to do this in the past, which I think is natural, right? I think that there's a natural impulse to want to distract and subdue that type of pain. Do you find yourself years removed from whether it was a heartbreak or whether it was just a separation of friends, or maybe it was a failure at work, where years removed you find yourself experiencing that same type of pain when someone brings it up again, right? When you hear that person's name, or when you see that person face to face. All of those emotions just come rushing and pouring into your heart and soul, and you feel all that pain in an instant. Why does that happen? Because you were okay for the last year before that, right? It's because you never actually processed the emotion. It's because you never actually allowed yourself to dive deep and feel the full intensity of that emotion, to feel the full depth of that emotion. And if you don't do that, then time won't magically heal. You'll just get really good at blocking out that pain, but eventually you're going to find yourself in a situation where it will hold you back. And so right now, to prevent that type of situation, you need to feel the emotions. And I actually think that guys are a lot worse at this than women are. There was a study that came out that said that women have the tendency to feel more coming out of a relationship, both physically and emotionally. They feel a lot more pain coming out of a relationship. And guys felt less. But in terms of fully healing, the guys never got there for the most part, right? But the women did. The women were able to fully heal. The women were able to fully recover because they were able to process that emotion from the beginning, right? And that's the approach that you need to have for guys out there, for girls out there. You need to understand that it's okay to not be okay, and you need to feel all of that. Allow yourself to scream in your pillow. Allow yourself to listen to sad music. Allow yourself to go on drives and just rant about it. Like, it's okay. It's okay to do that. And don't feel bad about getting that type of emotion out. It's necessary. And if you are in a situation where you're blessed with really good friends around you, you're going to find yourself telling that story over and over again. That's also okay. Don't feel guilty about it. It's your responsibility to ultimately change the frame shift of how you're speaking about the story and make it a more positive situation. But for now, it's okay to let that all out. And don't bottle that up. Don't just immerse yourself in work immediately. Don't go out meeting people immediately. Don't go out and try and figure out ways to distract yourself from it. Let yourself sit in bed for a little bit. It's okay to not be okay. Stop waiting for closure. I understand that a lot of relationships unfortunately end without everything being said, without everything being put out onto the table in front of the both of you and taking an honest and objective look at things and apologizing for the wrongdoings that might have occurred. Especially if you are the one that got hurt in the relationship. More so, I understand the desire to want this type of accountability. Of course, you want the other person to recognize what they did wrong, say that they feel extremely ashamed and guilty of what they had done. They're going to have to live with that for the rest of their lives, and they sincerely apologize. Don't get me wrong, that would be incredible to have, but you don't need it, okay? Don't get that twisted. It's nice to have it, you don't need it. And why do I say this? Because the more you wait on the other person to meet you in person, for the other person to respond to your texts and your calls and your FaceTimes, and to take this level of accountability, the more you're giving them power, right? Because you're halting any progression forward in your healing journey and waiting for that person to take accountability. You don't need it, okay? That person, whether or not they decide to be a good human being and actually confront whatever is going on within them, that's their problem. That has nothing to do with you. Yes, does it suck? Absolutely. But we're not giving that person any more power. Because really, do you need their affirmation? Do you not know how painful it was to be broken into a million pieces? Do you not know what it felt like, that gut-wrenching feeling that you had when it all went down? You do know that. You do. You don't need their approval. You don't need their permission to feel all of these things and to move forward. You're better than that. Have a little bit more respect for your future self. And again, begin this journey now. I think a really important pro tip to include here, if you're in a situation where you can't get that closure, nor do you have a good support system around you that you can share such intimate pain with, I would highly suggest that you write things down. As ineffective, trivial, or unimportant as that might sound, it's actually one of the most powerful things that you could possibly do. Because a big part of us trying to feel this pain in its full depth and intensity, because I just mentioned how important that was, is just getting it out of our system. And writing is a really good method to do this. And you can treat it as if you were writing this letter to your ex. And just get everything that you want out onto this piece of paper. You can read it aloud to yourself, but going through that process of writing it, going through the emotions, going through the thoughts, and just jotting it down gives you a level of organization. And the reason why that is so important too is because you're experiencing a lot of anxiety, as if you are someone that doesn't have either the closure or the support system, you're bottling all of this inside. And there's just so much clutter going on that might be even separate from the breakup itself, but it's all mixed up in this one jumble of pain. And it's just gonna exhaust you for a while if you don't get it out of your system. So I would highly suggest you just get a notebook for yourself and write these things down. Remove triggers immediately. I actually think that it may be harder now than ever to fully recover from a breakup due to the element of social media, right? You have access to your ex's life whenever you want, and that can actually be a very dangerous position to put yourself in, even if you can't foresee all those dangers now. I'm actually just going to give you a situation that I think will perfectly explain this. If you decide to continue following your ex, this is exactly what's going to happen. Your ex is going to reshare something on their story, or your ex is going to post something onto their feed and there will be a lot of comments. In both situations, right, if it was a reshare on their story, it may be with another individual. And if it's in their comments, of course, those comments are from other individuals. And very much the person in their story or the person in their comments could be their second cousin that you had no idea about. It could be, but you don't know that. And that thought that it could actually be their new partner that they're seeing is going to drive you absolutely nuts. It's going to make you overthink to the max. It's going to make you so insecure and so filled with hatred that it's going to plummet any type of progress you got going on. It's so unhealthy for you to look at that. And I promise you that desire to do that, that desire to look at their profile constantly, it's natural. And you will fall into that temptation, right? And it's so important to not put yourself in the situation to even have those thoughts in the first place, right? Again, have the respect for your future self, the future self that's done with all this healing, to remove them, to unfollow them. Because a big part of this, right, is expanding the world away from just your ex. If this is your ex, right, it's expanding the world because there is so much in the world. In the grand scheme of things, your ex doesn't really matter in the entirety of life. There are entire countries running properly without even a thought about your ex. Your ex doesn't actually mean much in the grand scheme of things, but because you've spent so much time with them, you feel like they are everything, right? That they have a tie to everything. And so what you need to be doing is expanding your perspective on the world away from your ex. But what you're going to be doing by constantly putting yourself in situations to see your ex through social media is bringing that world back to your ex. Is shrinking your view back onto your ex. And so you need to remove triggers that puts it back into this direction, puts it back to your ex, and continue putting yourself in positions in this healing journey to continue expanding yourself and your perspective on the world. So remove that trigger, especially with social media, but there are other triggers too, right? Like you shouldn't be keeping your ex's teddy bear on your bed. You shouldn't be keeping your ex's clothes in your closet. You shouldn't be keeping old text messages. You shouldn't be keeping old photos. You should be deleting all of those things. I promise you that initial part is going to be hard. I won't lie to you and say that deleting all of that stuff or throwing those things out won't be hard, but you're going to thank yourself in the future for taking that initial step. Now, I do know, though, that not all triggers are necessarily that easy to remove. For example, if both of you live in the city, there will be certain streets or parks or shops or restaurants that remind you of your ex. And it's not fair to you to just never experience those things ever again. Nor is it possible in certain cases, right? If your route to work requires that street, you're going to take that street. So what you need to do is go through the process of reclaiming those places. And that means having enough memories in those places that creates a new association. Now, what I mean by this, let's use the park as an example. If that's a trigger for you, you would take your closest friends to the park, and your only goal there is to have a good time. It's to smile, it's to laugh, it's to tell jokes, it's to tell good stories, it's to have a picnic, it's to play some sports, it's to play some board games, whatever the case may be. And it certainly won't be easy at first. You'll still remember your ex, and that's okay, that's a part of the process. The only rule here is you don't talk about your ex, but the more times you do it, the more memories you create, the stronger that association becomes. And I just thought that this was such an important caveat to insert here, just because for a lot of you, I know it's more than just text. I know it's more than just posts. It's literally walking out of your door and it's your entire city, right? And that could be such a suffocating, isolating type of feeling to know that you may never be able to experience the things that you've enjoyed in the past just because it has a tie to your ex. I want you to know that it is possible to reclaim those things and continue doing everything that you love to do. Being alone doesn't mean you have to be lonely. And I know that it feels like it does right now, and I just mentioned in the beginning of the video that I felt that way. I wish somebody would have told me this. So listen up. This next stage of your life that you're about to enter, this journey you're about to go on, is going to be one of the most incredible experiences of your life. It's going to be so much fun. There's going to be so much adventure. And you're going to learn so much. You're going to be able to work on yourself fully, right? You're going to be able to pursue the passions that you've always wanted to pursue, to develop the high-value skills that you've always wanted to develop. You can actually listen to that inner voice of yours that has always called you to be a singer or an artist or a social media creator or an editor or a programmer or a doctor or a lawyer, whatever the case may be. And you've always had this calling that you've always suppressed because you didn't have the time, nor the energy, nor the space. You have it now. And I want you to approach it with full force. I want you to expand your perspective on what is possible, because you are powerful beyond measure, and you're going to find that out real soon. You're going to be carrying yourself with the utmost confidence. It's going to be radiating out of you, and then you'll become the magnet in which like-minded people come together and grow. And so you'll be this fully developed individual, and you'll also have a community that supports you, that is on the same wavelength as you. And as you are this most attractive version of yourself, you're going to find someone in the future that can also support you romantically. So don't lose hope. It will get better. You have my word.